We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
There's like a resurgence of voodoo in Haiti amongst young people as a religion.
Since when?
Since like 2010, like in the 20 teens. Like this article is from 2024.
So like a new resurgence. We're not talking about like from the 60s on. We're talking about like within the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, like this article's from 2024, from April 2024. It's talking about people from 2010, but then other like college students from like converting in like 2018, 2019, 2020. Mm-hmm.
Why? What is the impetus to bring people into voodoo or to explore voodoo now?
There's a bunch of different reasons. It's like some people were Christian and I don't know, their faith wavered for some reason or another, and they were brought into a voodoo society. Others, found it at college or things like that. And then a lot of them do say, like, after that, they liked the history of it and that kind of thing, and that it's, like, native to their country or something. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. A lot of these bigger societies... some of the bigger societies that they talk about, like a majority of their members are under 30.
That's fascinating.
Like 2/3 to 1/3. Like 2/3 are under 30 and 1/3 is above 30.
So it's like a young person's religion right now, sort of.
Well, it's becoming that. That's what this article implies. It's not super, super long, so like I don't want to draw too broad of generalizations, but
sure.
I mean, it's long. They talk to 4 or 5 different people and a little bit about the history. But I'm saying it's not like, a complete history of voodoo in the 2010s in Haiti. So, but yeah, the implication is that like young people are being drawn to it, which I think is super interesting.
That's cool. So are the young people also experimenting with zombies then? Does it talk about zombies in the article?
Does not talk about zombies.
Okay.
Sadly lacking.
Well, we'll have to make up.
Get there.
Yeah, we'll have to make up for that.
Because we are slaying monsters. And we've got Maddie J across the table.
Hey.
We got Katie.
Hi.
And I'm EJ. And we're going to do some more zombie talk.
Yeah.
This is part 2, right?
Yeah, this is part 2. Part 2 of the Zombies of Haiti. So in our last episode, we talked about how the Haitian Revolution, the only successful slave uprising in history, that led to a period of unrest in this new country that ultimately brought the United States to their shores in the early 20th century. But the fear of Haitian culture, disguised by distrust of their mysticism, started long before that. Now, I don't think that the Haitian Revolution was a direct cause of the Civil War, but the unrest it spawned was definitely part of the racist viewpoints shared by plantation owners in the early 19th century. They began to spread rumors about their laborers, that they were practicing occult magic rites, and they held this like intrinsic power, that these practices would often involve barbaric rituals like cannibalism, sacrifice, and that they held a mystical power that could covertly overthrow their civilized owners, their slavers. We've heard this before, right? This is using the occult, using this fear of the occult to demonize a population. We talk about this all the time. Writing in Anthropology News, Danielle Boaz says, people who opposed emancipation and the extension of voting rights to people of African descent used such stories to argue that Black people were too superstitious to be granted these rights and freedoms. By the 1850s, these views were being weaponized even further. New Orleans, already a cultural melting pot because you had the French, the Creole, the African populations there. That had also become one of the wealthiest cities in the country. But this was the very early days of emancipation, and that was often met with very violent resistance. New Orleans police raided voodoo celebrations. They charged participants with things like unlawful assembly. And you had words like rites and superstitions being thrown around in this discourse. And the whole intention here was to paint it like a witchcraft, like a darker magic ritual instead of just, hey, there's a religion like Christianity, Judaism, anything like that.
What's interesting to me is that a lot of the people that were probably against this idea, I mean, a lot of them were probably those white Protestant types, but probably a lot of them were also French Catholics. And Catholicism has a way of being a little bit, it has been accused of polytheism in the past, because of all the different saints and everything. And so there's a foreign element to Catholicism, especially in the early days of immigration in this country. If you talk about the Irish immigrants and the Italian immigrants coming over who were Catholic, were seen as almost like practicing something similar to voodoo. It just is a change of culture and time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's hard for us to think about it today, but like when JFK was elected, a Catholic was elected to president. That was like a big deal.
Right.
And actually Joe Biden was the second Catholic president.
That's wild.
Which is like kind of wild to think about.
Wow.
And I love that you bring up the Catholicism angle too, because remember, we had already seen voodoo kind of blending with some of these Catholic ideas because that was being brought from Europe to the New World. And so we're going to talk in a little bit about how the lines between some aspects of voodoo and some aspects of Catholicism did become a little blurry. When New Orleans was captured by the Union, newspaper headlines exploded with stories about voodoo practices that were going on there. Daniel Boaz connects these with the rhetoric that Africans, once freed, would resort to their barbaric and hedonistic customs, allegedly throwing off the shackles of good, pure Christianity that had been forced upon them by their slavers, right? Mm-hmm. She says, one should recall that one of the arguments used to attempt to justify slavery was that Africans had no religion and Europeans needed to convert them to Christianity. These accounts were meant to show how quickly Black people would supposedly revert to African barbarism if freed from white rule. So basically, during the Civil War, it was actually anti-union. It was like anti-emancipation. We can't possibly allow these people to be free, or they're just going to turn back to these awful, horrible satanic rites and customs.
Or absolutely no religion whatsoever, which is completely untrue.
Yeah.
Many of them who came over were Muslims.
Yes, yeah, a large portion were, yes. But to me, the intention is very clear here. Half a century before, we saw a slave uprising that actually overthrew the entire government. The slavers refused to believe that it could be a result of their practices and, their crimes against their laborers that sparked this revolution. It had to be sinister. It had to be occult power that drove these people to rebel. Because why wouldn't everyone want to be ripped from their homeland, packed into a ship with no breathing room, sent halfway around the world, and forced to do physical labor on a hot plantation and worship a god that you've never heard of? It can't be that. That can't be the reason that you had an uprising. The uprising had to be they were tempted by evil magic. Even though some people refused to believe it, the Union won the Civil War. Newspapers began publishing exposés on African religions, which they largely lumped under the term voodoo, that phrase voodoo. In 1866, a Memphis newspaper ran the headline, "Voodooism, the native African pagan rife among the freedmen." Again, pushing this idea that without Christianity, we're just reverting back to some kind of demon worshipping occultism.
Yeah, I think it's too like Southerners were not happy that they lost the war. They were not happy about emancipation. And even the people, obviously, there's a lot of strong racism going on. And after the Civil War, there was like an immediate effort to come up with other ways to make Black people second-class citizens. And so, yeah, I think demonizing their religion, no pun intended, but like, you know, making people afraid of Black people, people who would otherwise who might be inclined to be like, oh, well, now I have more people I can hire, right? If they just saw them as people whose labor was available to purchase, you know, and hire and things like that, make them afraid to be involved with someone because, oh, they're practicing this weird religion. They're, you know, devil worshippers or whatever. Like, I just think there's so many layers to what's going on there.
There was also this fear, I think, where if you give them, if you emancipate them, if you start treating them as people instead of as property, then they're getting equal rights. And if they get equal rights, then they also get the right to vote. And if they get the right to vote, they will use it to further their own agendas, because that's what voting is all about, you know? And so they were afraid of them also having a voice in the political machine. And you don't want them to have that. And so you demonize it that way. If they get political power, they will use it to make voodoo like the national religion or something like that. You know, they'll try to usurp Christianity through their voting power.
Right. Which we've seen recently with like, you know, making people afraid of like Muslim communities because, you know, they're going to make everyone, oh my God, I'm blanking on the word. But after 9/11, it was like everyone's going to have to be like jihadist or remember all those like fear mongering that was happening?
Oh, yeah. It was exactly the same thing.
Yep.
So all of this is very largely the cultural background for William Seabrook's trip to Haiti. We talked about him in the last episode. In many ways, Haiti was viewed by the conservative media as a possible outcome for the U.S. in the post-emancipation climate. This is what can happen to us. By the end of the 19th century, some newspapers were even comparing the U.S. South to Haiti, now that all of these free people were allowed to have their lives. And unfortunately, Seabrook, the surrealist S&M practitioner and occasional cannibal, was entirely the wrong person to navigate this very delicate debate. His book depicted Haiti as an exotic land filled with arcane rituals and superstitions, plagued by demons on the fringes. And so he started invoking these ideas like the zombie. The Magic Island was the title of his book, and it was the first English language book depicting zombies. Tapping into the Western world's fear of the occult, fascination with foreign places, it quickly became a bestseller. And that obsession with this presumed barbaric, primitive religion in this exotic place played right into America's justification for peacefully invading Haiti.
Peacefully invading Haiti.
I mean, that's what they did.
Peaceful invasion sounds like such a... Yeah.
How do you mean like they peacefully invaded?
Is that their propaganda? Like
No. It is the invasion by taking over the banks. And here, let's talk about it. So David Frophafel, in his Alleviate Objects, Intersectional Entanglement and Progressive Racism in the Caribbean Art, writes, Voodoo has also become a critical mechanism to other and exercise Haitian society since the U.S.-American occupation between 1915 and 1934. It is no coincidence that exactly around this time, the U.S.-American movie industry started to transform Pan-African religion into a racist trope of horror and fear. It was part of a larger racist discourse that tried to legitimize and reinterpret the USA's aggressive, hegemonic expansion into the Caribbean as a civilizing mission by demonizing Haitian society and culture in the process. So when I say that it was a peaceful invasion, it's because it was a cultural one. Now, a lot of this spawned from the fact that Germany had a presence in Haiti by the early 20th century. And what do we know about the early 20th century? We were afraid of Germany. You know, we were afraid of Germany in World War I. We were afraid of Germany in World War II. And so the U.S. response to that was to start their own presence in Haiti. And they maintained financial control of Haiti until 1947 through controlling Haitian banks.
This was Germany, you said?
No, the U.S.
The U.S.
did.
controlled?
The
Okay.
U.S. did. In fact, after the U.S. started this campaign to drop in and, just kind of control Haitians' finances a little bit more, FDR basically rewrote the Haitian Constitution. And we talked about this last time. There's a passage in his rewrite of the Constitution that allows foreign governments to own land in Haiti. So then the U.S. basically said, hey, it's cool if we just own land here. And we say it's okay, so it's okay. And then the U.S. was able to pass that constitution through an electoral college where basically none of Haiti actually got to vote on the laws that were now going to govern them for some 20 to 30 years.
Sounds like a classic U.S. move.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and this was that peaceful occupation. There was never a war as part of it. It was just gradually controlling the finances of this country gives you control over the land, over the people, and over the narrative of it as well.
Oh yeah, which is just as bad. It sounds to me like a better word might be cold invasion.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Not like Cold War.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now, in terms of culture, Hollywood loved William C. Brooks' The Magic Island. 5 years after it came out, a film adaptation was released titled White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi. The movie perverted Seabrook's claims even more and made Lugosi a voodoo sorcerer named Murder Lazandre, who worked with a plantation owner to turn a heroine into a brain-dead zombie with a magic potion. Reviews for White Zombie were mixed, we'll say. One of my favorite reviews comes from the Kinematograph Review and said, "It is not for the squeamish or the highly intelligent."
That is a perfect review. Wow. It gives you exactly an idea of what is going to happen in this movie.
Wow.
Fascinating film side note, though. Lugosi's character, Legendre, was one of the first gay characters ever depicted on screen.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. In this plot, he was...
when was the movie again?
1934.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He was hired by a plantation owner, Beaumont, who and Beaumont wanted to turn the heroine into a zombie so she would willingly marry him. But Legendre also turns Beaumont into a zombie in a scene of sexual control.
Oh.
And the implication here being that Beaumont wants the girl, Murder Legendre wants Beaumont.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And that also, I actually think that it's interesting that it's the first gay character depicted on screen, but I think it's also doing like a sub-narrative of being afraid of gay people, because there's this really amazing book called Gay New York.
I'm not familiar.
It's by, George Chauncey. And basically it tells the history of homosexuality that basically breaking the myth that 1960s gay life existed only in the closet, but also that there were no other forms of openly gay life prior to like Stonewall. And so like before basically the 1930s, you could openly be gay, you could openly be experimenting, not in the sense that we think of it, but in the sense that like the sexual aspect of it wasn't as like demonized. So like lots of men would sleep with other men and nobody really cared as long as you were like married to a woman, right? It was okay to just like, oh, oops. And like, wow. You couldn't publicly be gay in that sense. Like you needed to like have a normal life, but like the sexuality of it was less penalized. And then it became more of like how we come to think of it, where it's like if you even did the act, no matter what you were like in your like everyday life, it was bad. And that started in like the early 30s.
That's interesting. Yeah. When I think of, the 1920s, the roaring 20s and all of that, you think more of that sexual freedom and stuff. So that makes sense to me that there was more liberation at that time. And then slowly that got constricted over I guess, from the Great Depression on.
Yeah, and he links it to something about like the financial restraint of the Great Depression and fear and things like that.
Yeah.
But like one of the examples I remember that he gave is that they called them fairies. It was like the name that they gave like extremely like effeminate presenting men. Like sailors, for example, when they would come into port, if they couldn't find like a prostitute to sleep with, it was like totally fine to sleep with a fairy.
Wow.
Like everybody's like, well,
Wow. So it was sexuality seemed so much more fluid, and not that we have changed on like a chemical level. We're all the same, like we're all the same that we have been, but it's interesting how it was just such a fluid concept. Oh, no lady? All right. Come here, dude.
Yep.
Right.
That's great.
But it wasn't a dude. It had to be like a fairy.
Right. Well,
it had to be, but yes.
Still
yes.
a guy. Yeah.
Right.
Still a guy.
That's cool.
Still actively a man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Wow. Anyway, I didn't mean to derail us, but I thought it was an interesting, because I wonder if this had like that subtext of like, you need to be afraid of gay people too. They're going to like use their sorcery to make you sleep with them.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think you're probably a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's the intention of the movie or if the movie itself was like playing on that trope, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Right. But I still find it fascinating that was a plot point in the movie.
Yeah, it's really incredible. It's incredible. And so the thing is, talking about how we started to constrict these principles, this freedom in the 1930s, White Zombie would later be used as evidence that Hollywood needed to implement the Hays Code. Do you know the Hays Code?
Please define it.
I do,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the Hays Code was a very oppressive set of rules and regulations that aimed to keep entertainment, quote unquote, pure, which without the air quotes means white and Christian. The Hays Code...
And non-sexual.
And non-sexual, and yeah, I mean...
It's why you have people sleeping in separate beds in the 1950s, like television shows, like married couples.
And you needed your feet on the floor if you're in bed.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kneecapped creativity for decades. And it's, why I Love Lucy. You couldn't show two people in bed unless one person had their feet on the floor or something like that. Or there's no sex. There's no sympathetic villains. You couldn't have complex villains. All the villains had to be just straight up villainous through it.
I mean, 1950s television has its place, but I don't really like it that much. It is too pure for me. You know.
I do love Leave It to Beaver. I'm not
we
gonna
have
lie.
talked about this. Yeah.
I mean, it is so, as you say, AJ, it's very, like, so simple,
But
so charming.
Yeah.
these are the Hays Code. So these are the things that you cannot have. I love this list. Okay. You can't have the law defeated. So cops and the quote-unquote good guys always have to win. You can't show the inside of a woman's thigh. You can't show lace lingerie. You can't show dead people. Can't show narcotics being used or drinking by anyone who's considered a good guy. There can be no exposed bosoms, no gambling. You can't point guns at people, and you can't include Tommy guns.
No Tommy guns. Because
Yeah.
it's probably gang related. It probably
Right,
was like
yeah.
glorifying gangs.
Yeah, glorifying gang
Yeah.
violence. Yeah,
And you had all those earlier gang movies.
right. Yeah.
But so when was Casablanca made? Because he definitely drinks in that movie.
So
Humphrey Bogart does.
42. So they were relaxed as time went on, and then ultimately they got repealed. Actually, one of the first movies to break free of the Hays Codes was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Oh, yeah.
The first one to really, really push what movies could do.
That's fascinating. And I wonder what they mean by like no drinking by the good guys. Maybe they mean like drinking to excess or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking of White Christmas, which is a movie that I love and watch every year. And like there's definitely a party scene in that where they're all like not drinking to excess, but you know, they have like a champagne toast and like people are definitely like imbibing, not to excess. They're having a good time. They're dancing. It's very innocent.
It means drunkenness. You can't show, you can't have a hero who's an alcoholic, right?
I see.
No
Yeah.
way, absolutely not.
all good guys have to be pure and upright, upstanding citizens.
Yes, and the law can never be defeated. That was such a big thing too. Only the police always have to win.
Man, Westerns are probably really boring.
There's some decent ones. I feel like
there
I
are.
saw them all as a child
Yeah,
because
I mean,
my dad is very into them.
Yeah, my dad was too. Yeah.
I mean, the Searchers. The Searchers is a phenomenal Western.
I don't know that movie.
Anyway, Westerns will take us way in another direction.
Yep.
So meanwhile, you got the Hays Codes, and they're using white zombie, right? Because I mean, this is evil magic. This is sorcery. This is all the shit that nobody, quote unquote, wants to see. So while all that's happening, some of the most head-spinningly racist depictions are happening in Detroit as well. The same year White Zombie popularized voodoo magic, there was a man named Robert Harris who was arrested for murder. Allegedly, Harris, a black man, had killed another man named James Smith in his home, supposedly in front of an altar. And the police were very quick to call this a ritualistic sacrifice and dubbed the whole thing the Voodoo Cults of Detroit. And they started this whole kind of fear campaign of like, oh, there's so much voodoo going on behind the scenes, and they're sacrificing people in these altars. A lot of problems here.
In Detroit, of all places.
In Detroit.
Very random. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So, and the thing is, Harris and Smith weren't even followers of voodoo. They were members of the Nation of Islam.
Oh, wow. What year was this?
1934.
Wow, I didn't know it was
Wow.
that. I didn't know it went back to 1934.
So what's wild is there was actually a pretty big population of Islamic people living in Detroit, Islamic followers living in Detroit at the time.
I know there are now, but I didn't know it went back that far. That's interesting.
Yeah, there were.
Okay.
And the shrine that was in the home was a place that Harris had set up for home prayer, of course. As for a sacrifice, Harris himself had a history of mental instability and violence, according to his wife and his friends. So the media branded the actions of a mentally unstable person as a voodoo sacrifice, despite the fact that he wasn't even remotely related to the religion that they were talking about. This whole incident pushed Detroit Muslims into hiding for years.
Oh, wow.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about the things that voodoo isn't. But let's talk about some of the actual beliefs of voodoo, because they're going to inform the rest of our story. So voodoo is polytheistic, depending on your definition of the word. There is a supreme being, the Bandi or Bani, the good god, and there are also many Loas, or lesser gods, spirits. These Loas can interact with humanity, and they communicate between the good god, the Bandi, and us. And although there are many, many, many Loas, some are pretty well known. You have Papa Legba, the facilitator who allows communication between humans and God. You have Baron Samedi, famously depicted as a skeleton with a top hat. Mm-hmm. He's got and a cigar. There's Damballa, the serpent who shed his skin and created all the water on earth. And you have Izili Dantor, the goddess of mothers and natural power. That was the Loa who was inspired people to rise up during the Haitian Revolution. Now, we talked a little bit about Catholicism before, right? Loas function kind of similarly to saints in Catholicism. Each one has its own jurisdiction, its set of rules, and an individual might have their own personal connection to a specific Loa. That Loa would follow them and guide them throughout their life. In fact, during the religious oppression of the 19th century, many voodoo practitioners actually used Roman Catholic saints as kind of covert stand-ins to conceal their Loa worship. So Papa Legba is often seen holding keys. He'll be depicted holding keys like St. Peter. And so St. Peter was often used as a stand-in for him. Damballa, the serpent, is associated with St. Patrick, who drove the snakes out of Ireland, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes also Moses can be a stand-in for Damballa, because Moses, he threw his staff on the ground and it turned into a snake, you know?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's these blurry lines between them, and they used it as a way to covertly be able to continue to worship their spirits and practice voodoo in front of Catholicism.
I mean, it sounds also very similar to Christianity coming in and destroying pagan culture, and how pagan culture got wrapped up into Christianity. And in order to continue to worship paganism, they, slotted in gods, saints,
holidays, right?
So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
I mean, it shows that voodoo was always a more minor religion, right? Because Christianity did that with paganism because they weren't super successful in just immediately getting everyone to practice Christianity. So they're like, fine, your holiday is now a Christian holiday.
Yes.
It just happens to fall on the exact same day you were already doing something.
Yep.
And
suddenly you turn around 10 years later and you're like, well, wait a minute. When did I become a Christian?
I know.
When did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Joke's on the Christians, though. We're still dragging trees throughout the house for Christmas.
Uh-huh.
You sure are.
Exactly.
So voodoo practitioners believe that we all have souls. Souls are called Nam. But they're not just a single chunk of energy. They're a tapestry of ourselves. Anthropology professor Terry Ray notes that souls in Haitian voodoo have several parts. The T-bonage, the Guobonage, and the Met-Tet. At death, each of these parts of the soul has its own particular journey to go on, and so after you die, the parts of your soul separate out into the world. Therefore, voodoo death ceremonies involve ritualistically separating your soul so it can continue its journey into the next part of its life, into the future. Now, when you die, your T-bonage remains near your body for 9 days. During this time, a sorcerer can trap that part of your soul in a bottle and prevent it from moving on. That makes what's called a zombie astral, an astral zombie, which Ray points out, are the more common form of zombie. Although we wouldn't actually consider them a zombie, that's actually much closer to like a ghost, a spirit, because it's a trapped soul, right?
It sounds more like a Butu.
Kind of, yeah. A Buddha, Buddha.
Oh yeah, Buddha.
That's
right.
the Buddha is again this soul that was prevented from moving on in Hindu religions, right? Kind of the same thing. Now, the reanimated corpse is called a zombie cadaver, and that is created from alchemy that reanimated the soulless body. Because when you die, right, so your physical body gets separated from your soul. Your soul gets broken up into these three parts. Two of the parts go away. One of the part hangs out at the gravesite with you for 9 days. And during that time, you can trap the soul in a bottle or a container, or you can reanimate the body, but the body comes out without any soul. That's why you have zombies with no memories, no sense of self, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to reanimate the body within 9 days. Is that what they
No, you
think?
you have to trap the soul within 9 days.
But after 9 days, the soul is gone, but you can reanimate the body whenever.
As long as it's still there and functional, you could have, eventually the body's going to decay away, but as
Right.
long as it exists, yes, you can reanimate the body.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. These zombies are very far removed from the Romero zombies that we discussed in the previous chapter. They're shambling, they're mindless, but they're not marauding bands of killers. They're not disease spreaders. We always kind of see zombies equated with if you get bitten by a zombie, you're going to turn into a zombie, right? Mm. Yeah. Terry Ray writes, zombies are neither contagious, cannibalistic, nor apocalyptic. People generally do not fear them, but they do fear the possibility of their recently departed loved ones or they themselves being transformed into zombies in some way, shape, or form. Which is reasonable, right? We all fear death. We assuage those fears with knowledge that our soul, our consciousness will pass on. The journey will continue. It's reassuring to think that death is not the end. I think, we believe that there's something else that happens, but the concept that there's somebody that can impede that will restrain your soul after you die, that's fucking scary, right? It's the same idea that we have surrounding ghosts. There's these souls, like all of these ghost shows, there's always like, do you know you're dead? Do you know that, do you want to cross on? We help them pass on. Because they're unable to do so for some reason.
I don't understand, just as a personal takeaway.
Yeah.
Like, I get it because they're speaking to these ghosts in the framework of Christianity, right? Where the goal is to pass on to heaven or something like that.
Right.
But sometimes I wonder if ghosts are real, if it's more of just like a dual reality. I don't know. Like, why do we have to create being a ghost as a bad thing? Like, what if you're just a ghost and then you're just like wandering around and you can do like whatever the fuck you want to do? I don't know. Why? I find it interesting that we don't have this idea of like being a ghost as freeing in some way where like it's you, but you're just like not in the shackles of like, you're not bound by the shackles of like physicality and time.
The mortal realm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
This sounds quite appealing, actually. Like if you think about like Casper the Friendly Ghost, I feel like he was pretty happy with where he was. It's like not very many depictions of that. I don't know. We need more Caspers, but I think I agree. I think that if I was a ghost, I'd be happier than absolutely oblivion of nothing. Like, I'd rather be a ghost.
It might depend on where you are, assuming you're stuck in place. If you're stuck in place, if I was stuck in place at home, that'd probably be fine. If I was stuck in place at like work, that would suck.
Yes.
That's true.
It's true. It does depend on where you are.
Or like on the subway.
Yeah. Or I guess you're right. Like, I guess I didn't think of it that way. Like, if you're stuck in place, I was thinking of it as like you can go wherever you want to go.
That would be great.
And that would be great because you could just travel around. But like, yeah, if you're stuck in place, wherever that ends up being, that would suck.
But maybe it's a cool house.
Maybe that's what hell is.
Yes.
You get stuck in place on the subway for your eternal life.
The MFL forever. And you have to smell all the smells.
Yeah. One last little side note about voodoo here, because I think this is fascinating. Probably the most well-known icon of voodoo is the voodoo doll, right? These fetishes, they were created by a bokor or an ongen, and they are, adorned with a token of the person. So a lock of hair, a fragment of clothing, and any action you do to the doll gets done to the person as well. Most commonly, we think of jabbing them with pins, right? Causing the target physical pain. But voodoo dolls have a really ironic history. Did you, in your research, did either of you encounter this at all?
No, I did not encounter this part of it.
Okay.
No.
The voodoo dolls were not associated with voodoo at all to begin with. According to Daniel Boaz, the practice actually stems from European witchcraft and this thing called the poppet. The poppet was a folk magic effigy, usually made from sticks, roots, or straw, and they would use it in folk magic rituals. If you think of the Blair Witch thing, that thing that was hanging from all the stuff, that's a poppet.
Wasn't it also in that movie? Oh God, help me out. Oh no.
The Ritual?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in The Ritual too.
I see it in some movies where it's like crazy white people in the woods, and it's like, there's going to be a poppet hanging from a tree for sure.
Yeah, it's very witchy. Yeah.
That should be a name of a horror movie. Crazy white people.
People in the woods.
That'd be a scary movie.
Poppets were believed to be bridges to an actual physical person. And if you manipulated them, you manipulated that individual. Can be cut, they can be burned, but they can also be doused with love potions, or they could be hung in places to keep them safe and healthy. This practice has been around so long that poppets have actually been found at Greco-Roman archaeological sites.
Wow.
The origin of the voodoo doll probably started with the white European settlers in the Caribbean. They were afraid of witchcraft and the dark powers of these people that they were enslaving, particularly, during periods of famine and disease and stuff like that. And so they associated these people with similar practices to their homeland's witches, like using effigies to bring misfortune. And so they put the idea of the voodoo doll on voodoo initially. And then by the end of the 1800s, some branches of voodoo had actually co-opted the idea of voodoo dolls and began using them in their own rituals. Now, you did have the Congo religion using Nakundi fetishes, which were carved dolls that housed spirits. The spirits are called the Inkisi. And it was kind of like building a little house for an Inkisi to live in. And in return, that spirit would do your bidding, like protect your home, protect you from misfortune, something like that. And you'll often see those dolls with nails driven into them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like a couple of nails. Sometimes it's like hundreds of nails in these carved dolls.
Didn't they do that in The Unbinding?
Yes. Yeah. They that was driving nails into, I think, the eyes of the doll.
Yeah, or was the doll found with nails in her eyes?
Maybe. Yeah, something like that.
The Inkisi driving, like those with the nails in them, it isn't to cause harm, right? It's just something that's part of like building the house for the doll. Because like when you were saying it, it didn't sound like they're trying to harm anyone necessarily. It's getting a spirit to do your bidding.
Yeah, we don't really know why that practice started. Europeans believed that it was a poppet thing and that it was supposedly to cause harm. Historians, some of them claim that the idea originated with Christian missionaries, the iconography of Christ nailed to the cross. And that was why they were driving nails into these fetishes. Other historians, like Wyatt McGaffey, who is the professor emeritus at Haverford, claims that that gives way too much credence to the proliferation of Christianity. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with him. That's kind of the Christocentric worldview where everything must be influenced by Christianity.
Sure. Yeah.
So he argues that there are many symbolic reasons for using nails, which are usually considered a binding ritual. And so driving the nails was actually helping to bind the Nkisi inside the fetish, which I think is closer to the unbinding.
Yeah.
That
Got it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they even talked about the Nkisi in the unbinding. I don't know if they spoke about that stuff. I don't remember now. I want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I also wonder too, like the poppet coming over, because voodoo, it's basically like a belief system that was adopted from lots of elements of different religious practices, because it was a lot of enslaved people that had come from different regions, like together creating something. So it wouldn't surprise me if it came from poppets, or if it came from, someone from the Congo who was in the group.
Yeah.
The multi-million-dollar question here, of course, that we've been dancing around is, these zombies, are they real? Is there any evidence that these creatures were actually a part of real religious practices? If you ask anthropologist and ethnobotanist Wade Davis, the answer is yes. Zombies are very real. Born in Vancouver, Davis studied at Harvard, earning his PhD in ethnobotany, the study of the relationship and interaction of humans and plants. He had made a name for himself as an immersive researcher, which is to say that he really would travel to these places and embroil himself in the culture, in he was a bit gonzo, right? He's a little bit of a gonzo researcher. In the 1970s, he had taken a trip to South America to study plants, where he slept on the ground during the rainy season and ran out of food and had nearly been killed by a jaguar.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I hope he at least got some ayahuasca while he was down there.
He did, actually.
Good for him.
Yeah, that was part of the point.
That was part of the point.
We sure the jaguar was real.
In his own words, his intention with his research was to, quote, risk discomfort and solitude for understanding. So he was teaching a class in Boston when he received a very particular invitation. Would he be willing to travel to Haiti for pharmacological research? This request came from a Dr. Nathan S. Klein, one of the founders of pharmacology. Now, Klein was a very early proponent of antidepressants and using drugs to treat psychiatric diseases. His work on mental health changed the entire landscape of the practice for decades. He's essentially one of the founders of psychiatry. So Wade Davis is very happy to entertain this request. But when the two met at Klein's Manhattan apartment, things got weirder and weirder, because Klein took him aside and said to him, "The first problem is to know when the dead are truly dead." And with that ominous phrase, Klein recounted a very strange story. There was a man named Clervius Narcisse who was admitted to a Haitian hospital in 1962. He was running a fever and coughing up blood. Doctors tried to treat him, but nothing worked. Narcisse died 3 days later from renal failure, kidney failure. His sister, Angelina, wept at his bedside. His body was kept in cold storage for 20 hours before being buried in a small cemetery north of his village of Leicester. In 1980, 18 years later, a man approached Angelina at the market in Leicester. He introduced himself using the boyhood nickname for Clervius. He told her he had been raised as a zombie and hidden away because of a land dispute. He had done slave labor on a plantation before an insurrection broke out, and he escaped. His detailed understanding of the family and the relationship was enough to convince Angelina that this man was her brother. This was the man that she sobbed at the bedside of this guy.
Well, when did he die? How old was he when he died the first time in
He
62?
was 40 something. I believe he was 40 even.
Okay, so he would have been like in his late 50s or early 60s,
Right.
depending.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And he looked like her brother?
Yes. In fact, he showed her a scar, which was the same as a scar that her brother had gotten when he was a child.
This is weird. Okay, keep going.
Like, if he was like famous and he died, I can see why somebody would be motivated to come back and be like, hey, it's me, you know? But they were just regular people living their lives, right?
More or less.
More or less.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Like,
He wasn't a celebrity or anything like that.
who the hell would know or think to pretend to be this guy? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless there's something to be gained by it. So, okay, go ahead.
Uh-huh.
So Angelina believed this story, and so she brought it to a renowned Haitian psychiatrist, Dr. Lamarque Douillon. Douillon practiced at the Port-au-Prince, here you go, Katie, Port-au-Prince Centre de Psychiatrie et Neurologie.
The Center of Psychology and Neurology in
Right.
Port-au-Prince.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
No. It's good.
So Douillon did not believe that the zombie was a mythical creature. And he was a med student. He had studied under Nathan Klein, the guy who brought Wade Davis aside and said, hey, you want to go to Haiti? Douillon learned about all these various conditions that can render a person unconscious through drug cocktails. We call them anesthesia, right? Douillon became convinced that some form of a pharmacological coma was being induced in people, which gave the appearance and the submissive nature of zombies. If he could prove that, it could shed light on this mythical creature and maybe prove that zombies are real.
Can I ask though, like,
Yeah.
does he think that that someone's alive and you give them this cocktail, or that someone actually dies and that within a certain amount of time you can revive them with this cocktail? Because part of me is like, maybe Clairvius, I mean, he was in cold storage for 20 hours.
Right.
I feel like the hypothermia, you would die.
Right.
Like, anyway, yeah. I was like, maybe
it's a
he
good
wasn't really
question.
dead. Like why they have the bells on the graves, because they used to bury people thinking they were dead and they weren't actually dead. They had just been unconscious for too long.
Right.
Like,
So that's a great question. So the idea here, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit quickly, but the idea is that there is perhaps some type of chemical compound that can induce this appearance of death long enough for a person to be pronounced dead, be buried, and then be dug up and resurrected, quote unquote. So the idea is less that the zombie in its undead kind of shambling state is a real creature versus a mythical creature, and more that we can possibly fake the appearance of death. So does that answer your question?
it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it. So it's like basically it mimics death, and then so they don't actually die.
Right. And
Well, at least this doctor thinks that they don't actually die.
yes, yeah. Douillon believes that
Douillon.
maybe they do not actually die. They just have the appearance of death. And he also probably thinks that there's some type of sedative compound as well that gives the appearance of these slave-like zombies.
Like those bugs. What are they called? TARDISes?
No, TARDIS is from Doctor Who.
No, I know. Hold on.
TARDIS?
Tardigrade. A tardigrade.
Right. Yeah.
tardigrades, they're actually kind of cute. They look like little fat beetles, but they're very, 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 very small. And they can actually be frozen for like hundreds of years, and they like dehydrate themselves and basically just like go into a coma. And then you can like put a little drop of water on them like 100 years later, and they're like, oh, yay, do. And they just like go around. Yeah, they're nuts. We've sent them into space on the outside of spaceships, and they've been fine. They've come back to Earth.
Wild. What?
Yes, look them up. But basically, this guy is saying that like there's some sort of sedative that can make a human being like a tardigrade. Like it looks dead, but it's not actually dead.
Pretty much. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
And to explain why he believes this, and to also kind of put yourself in where medicine is at this point. So this is the 80s, but, and I swear this is not a made up thing, Douillon actually did zombie experiments on mice at McGill University in Quebec during the 1960s and 70s.
I believe it.
His supervisor and mentor there was Ewan Cameron. Does anybody know that name, Ewan Cameron?
No.
Okay. Cameron is legendary in Fortean circles because he's one of the driving forces behind MK Ultra, the government's mind control program.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree with EJ that I believe this because in the 60s and 70s was when we were doing all that weird shit with the mind control stuff.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Throughout the 60s, and MK Ultra is too big a tangent to get into, but during the 60s, Cameron's team, partially funded by the CIA, was conducting secret research into the nature of memory. The intent was to alter patients' memories through unconventional techniques like electroshock therapy, pharmacological solutions like LSD. Cameron himself developed an insane technique called psychic driving, later called depatterning. But in that, he exposed sedated patients to tape loops, repeating the same message over and over. And he claimed that you could implant subtle suggestions in patients' minds that way.
That sounds like Manchurian Candidate type level.
It's exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this idea that you could create a sort of covert, latent soldier who had this trigger in their mind, and if you say the trigger word, they're gonna snap and they're gonna execute their mission. But they could spend, I don't know, 20 years undercover, right?
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, not real, but
Yeah.
concepts.
that's what some people, the conspiracy is that Sirhan, who shot
Right.
Robert F. Kennedy, was one of these guys.
Right. Yes. Detractors of Cameron's research claim that his psychic driving was less about programming and more about developing in-depth torture methods for extracting information from resistant sources. And some people, like Harvard professor Rebecca Lemov, claim that Cameron would probably have done all of this research with or without CIA funding because he was just like really into this shit. I bring all this up because I think it's critical to understand that this guy was mentoring Douillon. So you've got the Haitian researcher bringing his history with zombification and his desire to unlock these mental mysteries. And you've got a psychiatrist who's obsessed with torture and figuring out how to change the way people think in order to make them more compliant. That's a zombie, right?
Yeah, but also, where does Klein come in? Because didn't Douillon also study with Klein?
Douillon studied under Klein as well, yes.
Okay.
And Klein, of course, is one of the founders of psychiatry, basically changed the paradigm of how we dealt with mental health and started to introduce drugs for it, and wants to do it again. Because if we can come up with this other pharmacological solution, we might be able to actually upend anesthesia as well. Cameron's research at McGill involved feeding various drugs to rats and observing them. One of these was Datura, the flowering nightshade. Douillon noted that when rats ingested Datura, they would fall into a catatonic state for hours before awakening. But this is as far as the research ever got. Cameron left McGill, the university shut down the zombie rat program.
Shocking that they shut down the zombie rat program.
I have this, I don't know this to be true, but I have this idea that he was just kind of doing this shit without really telling anybody what he was doing. And after he left, they reviewed his notes and were like, you're just fucking knocking out rats to try to make them into zombies? Like, we're not funding this anymore.
He was probably like, oh, I'm studying the effects of like certain plant biologics on rats. And they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, great. Isn't that wonderful?
And then they're like, wait, what? He's trying to create zombies.
You're doing what? So Douillan's time in Quebec convinced him that zombification was likely a very real process, a real phenomena. And this research, which has spanned nearly 30 years at this point, concluded that criminals may be drugging their victims, burying them alive, and then digging them up for resuscitation later. And he claimed that this left the victims in a semi-catatonic state, probably through the effects of drugs, maybe even just the trauma of the ordeal. And then once you have this person who has gone through the trauma of believing that they died, believing that they were dug up, they become pliable, and you can force them into slavery.
Wow.
This reminds me of two things. Yeah, one is like in like Seattle or Portland, how there used to be the underground tunnels. Mm-hmm. Portals to Hell did a show on this one.
Is that Seattle? I think
it's Seattle.
Yeah.
And where literally like crime rings, they would kidnap people and then they would drug them and like put them on ships. And by the time you woke up, you were like on a ship already being like basically being forced into being like a crew person or being shipped off to be a slave somewhere else, enslaved somewhere else. So it reminds me of that where like people were using drugs, obviously not to mimic death, but to just knock people out and then kidnap them. But then it also reminds me of Stockholm Syndrome. You're not saying that these people have become enamored with their captors or their situation in life, but they've basically become compliant because of the psychological harm that you've done to them.
Yeah.
And I just want to add that I think what Katie said earlier about people being put on boats to, I think that's where the term Shanghaied came from, getting Shanghaied.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. So Douillan studied Clairvius and the Narcisse family. He conducted a series of interviews with Angelina, the sister, and other residents of the town, and he posed questions to Clairvius that would only be known by members of the family. And Clairvius, the man claiming to be a zombie, answered them all correctly. After confirming the death certificate, seeing that it was renal failure, Douillan was left with only one explanation. This man was Clairvius, the guy who supposedly died in 1962.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's 1962, not 1862. Like, they had to know what renal failure looked like and was.
Right.
So how the hell do you fake renal failure in a medical institution?
That's a great question and is one of the big mysteries.
Okay.
How do you fake renal failure? We know for a fact that the body was on ice. It was in cold storage for 20 hours, and yet still he came back.
Yeah.
Not only how do you fake renal failure, but like true renal failure does damage to your body. Like that's a core function. So I'm just curious, like, let's just suppose that the drug is true. Like, you can fake death or whatever. You can shut down the organs. Like, how do they do that without then when you revive the person, I would assume the person, like, how is the person still functional? Because their vital organs haven't been functioning properly. Do you know what I mean? Like, that quickly causes problems throughout the whole body. So, yeah, I just don't understand how you would retain the health of the body to make the person even useful if you revived them.
I have answers to these questions, but we're going to hold them until later in the series.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll see. But we can keep coming back to this because these are the really big burning questions, though. It's not that insane to believe, okay, we create a catatonic state, right? But it is insane to say we create a catatonic state. This person is pronounced dead by medical professionals who should know what the fuck they're talking about. You know, sometimes from conditions that are provable medical conditions. The body goes through the process to get to the gravesite, which we'll talk about a little later on too. But like, you know, they don't just take a fresh body and throw it in a hole, you know?
Right, they had to have desanguinated him, or exsanguinated, whatever it's called.
Exsanguinated.
Exsanguinated him, and all that, yeah.
Yeah. So Douillon, presented with this, he contacted his former mentor, Nathan Klein, and reviewed the case with him. And the two arrived at the same conclusion. There must be some kind of pharmacologically induced state that mimicked death for long enough that Narcisse could be buried, but before he was dug up and carted away. So, who did this? Why? And what is the quote-unquote zombie cocktail of drugs that would create this state of undeath? Klein realized he needed boots on the ground in order to research Narcisse and the zombie drug. And he believed that Wade Davis, the guy who slept on the ground and got attacked by a jaguar, was the perfect man for the job.
Yeah.
When pressed, Klein admitted that his interest was more than just idle curiosity as well. The idea that there would be a drug that was this powerful, that it rendered people into a state of zombification, means they can't feel pain, they're not afraid, they're not traumatized. That could be very invaluable to medical science. As I said, he felt that this was a way to revolutionize the field of anesthesia the same way he had revolutionized pharmacology earlier. He wanted to be the man who brought this to the forefront.
Yeah, if there's a cocktail that can mimic death, I mean, that would be very powerful. But I see what he's saying. Like, it could also, if you could shut down the body in that way for like a limited period of time, like, yeah, you'd be able. I know nothing about medical processes and surgery, so, you know, listeners, correct how wrong I might be in what I'm about to say. But like, one of the complications, as I understand it, of surgeries is that like, if you have to interrupt something like the heart in order to operate on it, it's like the heart affects all the other things. So it's like you have to keep everything functioning while you're doing the thing on the injured part. But if you could like shut down the whole body so that nothing needs anything while you operate on the heart or whatever else you're doing, like it would make things easier for surgeons, right? Or
Totally.
doctors. If this was real, I don't know.
Totally.
EJ, you look skeptical.
No, I'm just drawing an analogy that I never thought about before, but it's like, it's kind of like a mechanic fixing a car while it's running, and how difficult that must be for like it's kind of like surgeons have to fix the cars while they're running. But if you can like turn the car off and everything's neutralized, then it's so much easier. It just brings to mind how difficult it is to be a surgeon, to be a doctor in any way.
Yeah. So crazy.
Yeah.
So this is 100% the thing that Wade Davis loves to do. So he said, I am absolutely your guy. And he traveled to Haiti and met with Max Beauvoir, a voodoo boker and biochemist. Now, Beauvoir was educated at City College, New York, before returning to Haiti, where he opened a restaurant and nightclub that featured voodoo rituals as entertainment and education.
Oh, cool.
So you go to his club and he actually has people perform these rituals, and he's trying to get people to have a different sense of voodoo rather than this, you know, all of the things that we talked about in the beginning of this episode. It's evil magic, it's barbaric, it's like hypersexual, all of this shit, right? Davis watched one of these performances and he questioned Beauvoir about the nature of zombification as he understood it. And they agreed that Davis should seek out a Hungan, or a priest, who could give him the recipe for a zombie poison. Beauvoir suggested that Wade Davis should also take Beauvoir's 16-year-old daughter, Rachel, as a translator, and travel across the island to St. Mark on the coast. Now, because it was the 80s, Davis drove this teenager who he had just met to a seaside town and asked for this is legit. She will be his accompaniment for the entire rest of this narrative. He's just driving this teenage girl around.
Because it's the 80s.
Because it's the 80s. That's exactly what I was going to say. They're like, oh,
Yep.
I just met you, but you seem trustworthy.
Sure,
Go right ahead.
Why not? So they find this kind of infamous Hungan, Marcel Pierre. Locals pointed them to Pierre's bar, which he owned and operated, but behind his bar was an alchemical shop. Davis describes it like this. Displayed prominently among the brilliantly colored powders, the rum and wine bottles, the playing cards, feathers, heads, Roman Catholic lithographs were dolls' heads and 3 skulls, one of them a dog and 2 human. On the wall was a swollen carcass of a pufferfish, a Cecil whip, and a staff decorated with horizontal bands of light and dark wood. Now, Pierre's focus wasn't alchemy, though. It was money. He agreed, I will provide a list of ingredients for zombie poison for you, and I will prepare it in front of you, as long as you reimburse me very, very well. Now, Davis is there spending Klein's money, so he's like, okay, I'll pay you whatever you want. Let's go get some ingredients. And so Davis, Pierre, and the 16-year-old Rachel went on a very elaborate scavenger hunt collecting ingredients. Like they went to this apothecary for elixirs and would get break wings was one of the things, cut water. They got an elixir called Respect the Crossroads. All these sorts of really like almost Macbeth style names, right?
Sounds like a video game side quest.
Very much. Yeah. This is very much a side quest here.
I'm already so skeptical because, I mean, I was skeptical all along, but I'm more skeptical because if he had been like, go get these plants that are like known things, like if he had been like, get these plants, but also get some nightshade, I would be like, okay, this sounds potentially legit. Like, not that it actually works, but like, you know, there's stuff in here that we know are known to be like chemical elements that do certain things to the human body. But like, what's in Crossroads elixir or whatever?
No
like,
idea. No idea.
It could be though. Like that could be
That's
a
true.
name for a sedative, like a colloquial name for something that's sedative.
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, let's find
Anyway.
out.
Okay.
Let's
Yes,
find out.
okay.
One of the other things that they had to do, apparently, to make this zombie poison is they had to break into a graveyard and dig up some bones, some human bones. Now, the police forbid them from doing that.
Sure.
Let's stick in the muds.
And so, luckily, Pierre said, don't worry, it's okay. I actually have some human bones at home that will do just fine. I don't know why Pierre didn't want to use the human bones that he had and was forcing them to go dig up bones in a graveyard, but he did.
He's like, the freshly dug up ones are more powerful.
Probably, yes. Yes.
So finally, hours of these side quests happen, and Pierre he says, I got what I need. All right. He takes some shavings from a human skull and meticulously combines everything that they've collected in a mortar and pestle, and then he handed Davis a dark green powder.
Wait, so they just have to be shavings? Why do you need to dig up whole bones?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like, he's just like, oh, let me grind a little off. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
a dark green powder.
Dark green powder. Davis paid at their agreed upon price, and he took the powder back to the Bokor Max Beauvoir. Beauvoir studied the powder. He showed it to his contemporaries, and they all concluded the same thing. This powder was nothing. Not a magical zombie powder. It was just completely ineffective. is inert. Davis had been taken for a ride, and the Hungen, Pierre, was much, much richer because of it. So much for the traditional methods. And I feel like you probably knew that when Pierre was like, yeah, I'll do it if you pay me. And then just kind of like ran him around gathering random shit and like, yeah, I'll take some of this and some of this. And we got to go to the graveyard. Oh, don't worry about it. I got the bones at home, blah, blah, blah. It's fine. But yeah, completely inert. So Davis turned to his next contact, Lamarque Douillon. Because maybe if he could talk to this psychiatrist who first cracked the case, he could find the solution there. And maybe he would be able to talk to Clervius Narcisse, the zombie himself. But we will talk about those interviews in our next episode.
I'm really, really tempted to Google Clervius, but I don't want to spoil the story for myself.
I know.
Nice. I mean, there's a lot of speculation still. It's just wild. It's wild. But we'll keep talking about it and keep thinking, you're asking really, really good questions as we go, though. So one of the things that I love about this story, and I'll give you a little clue to some of this, but one of the things I love about this story is that it functions a lot like a magic trick, where in magic, we talked about this with Doc Shields a little bit, the dirty work of the magic trick happens before you realize that the magic is being done, right? So if you're looking for the magician to be palming a coin or something like that, the magician's probably already done it.
As I was reading through like Haitian history and zombie and voodoos and voodoo stuff and all this, I came across this wonderful article that could be a good recommended like further reading for people. It's not necessarily about zombies or really voodoo, but it's from Lapham's Quarterly. Yeah, LAPHAM''S Quarterly, and the title of it is "All the Devils Are Here," which is a quote taken from Shakespeare's The Tempest. And if you read the article, you kind of understand why it's called such. It's entitled this way, but it's a really harrowing article on the cruelties of the white colonists on Haiti to the enslaved peoples and the propaganda against them. Which we kind of did talk about, the propaganda against the culture, the Haitian culture. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to point that out because I thought it was a really thoughtful article full of historical context.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us, checking out this zombie story, this zombie journey that we're going on. Yeah. Anybody have any words of wisdom before we close out?
I don't know. Don't go tasting random plants that you find, because you never know. You might become a zombie from.
Yes. And since we're talking about the 80s, don't do drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, not really.
I mean,
you can
to
do some
keep
drugs.
kids off
Yeah.
drugs.
Drugs are fine.
Yeah.
No one's here to drug shame you, but kind of maybe make sure you know what you're putting in your body before you do it.
Always a good idea. Yep. Always a good idea.
Good plan.
I think my
Only get your drugs from reliable sources.
There you go.
That's my takeaway.
Listen up, kids.
I think my takeaway is don't go looking for skulls when you have skulls at home. Just use the skulls you have at home.
But we always want more than we have, though.
It's true.
We always look beyond the fence.
Yeah.
The grass is greener, the bones are whiter, more blanched on the other side.
That's right. All right, everybody.
All
Be
right.
safe
Thanks,
out there.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials @Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.